Welcome back, everyone. So, this is part two of the week. So, the first part, we did the demo outline, and that's really what you need to focus on this week. The demo outline will walk you through how to do your own outline. And don't forget, those are due Friday, today's the 28th. So, what is that, October 1st or the 29th? Let's look. We're here, it's the 2nd. So Friday, October 2, that's when your outlines are due. Then the following week is when you're going to actually deliver your speech. You're going to record it and do the whole process, the actual full-on formal speech. Now, a couple things to tell you about that. First of all, go back and watch some of the other videos and look at the course pack so that you're refreshed on things like presenting online, right? That's something that's new to a lot of people, especially if public speaking is new to you. Then public speaking online is also extremely new. It sort of adds in an extra factor there. But there is information in the handout, the course pack. Let's go up. Page, no, just kidding. 14. 14 deals with anxiety, page 14 in your course pack. So if you have some apprehension about this, you're a little nervous, that's normal. There's some information there. There's also, I think, a PowerPoint on the website, the Blackboard site. And then on 16, page 16, you've got virtual speaking basics. Again, there's information, a PowerPoint on that. So be sure to check those before you just sit down and start recording, okay? And there's some information that will tell you what we're looking for specifically. So, get back down to where we are today. For example, make sure that you are, if at all possible, standing up for your speech. Make sure that the angle is good. So, it's not sort of here or there, so you're looking down at us. Try to get that on a somewhat level setting. Think about the lighting and where the lights are in the room, where the external lights coming in from outside, and the other things. Right, so that's all on earlier lessons that we've talked about. So make sure to check those out again to be safe. Now, today we're going to talk about informative speaking. And again, focus on your outline for this week. But my advice and opinion to you is that you should watch this video after you submit your outline or right after you get it where you feel comfortable with it. Then go back and watch the others as needed and then start practicing that speech. Now, I'll, of course, send you feedback as quickly as I can from the outline so that you can practice with what you'll actually use in case there's some things that need to change. But for now, let's talk about the basics of informative speaking or an informative style. So this is from your course handout. And as you see at the top there, it just starts with objectivity. What that means to most people is that you're not taking a favorable or unfavorable position, a left or right, up or down position on any topic. You're just presenting it as it is. Now, I wrote this a lot on your topic and source sheets, and I said, don't inadvertently persuade us with the informative speech. That's not the time for that. That's what I was getting at. Remain objective. So it's like seeing a bowl of oranges and saying objectively those are oranges versus subjectively, boy, I really like oranges. Keep those two things separate. Now, what I wrote on many of your papers was that some of your topics will be naturally persuasive. So, for example, if you're talking to us about global warming and you're telling us about the rising temperatures and sea levels and carbon emissions and all that, that's naturally going to put us in a negative mindset in terms of we recognize there's a problem here that needs to be solved. That's not exactly what I mean. I don't want you to maybe favor one plan to fight climate change over another or something along those lines. Whatever your speech is, I'm trying to think of examples. One was like paying college athletes. By the end of that speech, we shouldn't know if you agree or disagree with paying college athletes. Others trying to think of one that was sort of, we know there's a clear problem, but we need to do something about it. So I think one was like the response to COVID. How do we do it effectively? And there are different opinions, different views on how we should respond. There's some common threads like mask wearing, for example, but don't let us know exactly what plan you would take or you're going to take for your persuasive speeches. Stay as objective as possible. And that's just so important. Don't persuade us for this speech. You can do that later, twice. Okay, so when you practice, make sure that you're looking for things that you've written in the outline. You're saying out loud, record yourself, watch it, make sure you're not being persuasive, but do also make sure that you're being conversational. And that's the next item there. Be conversational with your style of delivery. That's both verbal and nonverbal, okay? So we've talked about this before, but my go to sort of way to get to that conversational style is not to tell you to relax and speak to us like you're speaking to your best friend. Instead, relax as much as possible and speak to us the way that you would speak to someone who you are comfortable around, but you want them to see you in the best light possible. You're not going to be upset. You're not going to be, angry or nervous or high emotions, however it might work. And so we just need you to remain sort of, relaxed and conversational. What that means for the verbal delivery is that your voice will change. If something's exciting and happy, it kind of goes up in pitch, up in tone. The volume might increase, the speed might increase. But if it's something not so great, your tone drops, your volume might drop, your rate might drop. And again, these are things we do naturally. And so I just don't want you to lose that natural shifting because you're giving a speech. If anything, that's where it needs to be amplified and magnified a little bit instead of pushed over aside. So when you think of this conversational style idea, it also can be applied to your nonverbals. So again, when you're speaking to that person, whoever he or she is, you're probably gesturing naturally. You're moving a little bit. You're not locked in one spot. Now, I understand we've got the camera and we've got to be careful of swaying and all those facial things that happen because of our medium here being recorded. But again, don't feel like you can't move at all. You can. So, how would you interact with that person? Maybe not face to face now, but if you were on a Zoom call, for example, with them, how would you behave sitting here? And model that for the speech. So those are the two things to start with. Remain objective, don't persuade us on accident, and be conversational as much as possible, both verbally and non-verbally. Okay, now, when we think about informative style and delivery, there are two things to talk about, verbal and nonverbal. And what you'll notice here is that verbal is pretty short compared to nonverbal. And that should tell us all something. That should tell us that while it is very important in terms of the things that you say, those matter, they aren't nearly as valuable maybe or communicative as the way that you say those things. So let's start out with verbal and then we'll move on to nonverbal. So the first thing you notice under verbal delivery is that clarity is key. This is not at any point in this class, it's not the time to sort of try to show off and use big words and styles that deviate from the outline and be flashy. That's not what we're here to do. We want clarity. We value clarity more than anything else. Yes, it's great if you can give a presentation that is captivating and has some bells and whistles in it that might be great for some audiences. But for us, we really just need to make sure that you make your points clearly. So when you do that with any audience, you need to think about who they are. So that's the next item here is understanding who your audience is. And you've already done that in some ways. So when you picked your topic, you told us about the relevance, why an audience of college students would actually care about your particular topic. And we had a number of different reasons. Some were very obvious, some were a little more outside the box, but we were able to clear that up pretty easily. So think about your audience now being the same group, right? College students, but don't think of it in what they might like, but what they will understand. And that's where you get into the ideas of adjusting complexity and jargon. So if you make a speech too complex, it can go over people's heads. They may be following along and then you throw out a term, maybe that's that jargon, right? So specialized language for a particular area, job, or field, and someone thinks, wait, what was that word? I've heard that word. What does that mean? And they get stuck trying to figure things out in their head. Meanwhile, you continue speaking and they don't come along with you. They're stuck back at that confusing or complex area of the speech. So, a couple things here. If you cannot be as complex as, if you can be less complex, go ahead and do that to a degree. And if there are alternative terms that are very understandable, widely understood, use those terms in place of those jargon terms or the words that not everyone will understand. And I tell you here to keep it on about a 10th grade level, and that's not to insult your intelligence. That's just to say that if we do this, even beyond the classroom for sure, we're less likely to lose people as we speak. They won't feel um, that things are over their head. Now, the flip side of that is that if you dumb it down too much or oversimplify it, people will feel as though you're patronizing them, you're talking down to them. I had a student once who gave a great speech on, I think, something about astronomy, but he spoke as though he was talking to kindergartners. I mean, it was literally the delivery that screwed him up, and it sounded like, okay, everyone, so today we're going to do the thing, and it's going to be great. Like, I mean, don't take on that style because you think, well, Carl said clarity is important. What's clearer than a kindergarten teacher? I should go to that realm. No, 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 no. You, like everything else, you have to find the balance. Just like with that conversational style, don't be too stiff, don't be too relaxed. Be in the middle. Find the good, happy Goldilocks zone. Same thing here. Don't be too complex. Don't be too simplified. Find that middle, understandable Goldilocks zone. One thing to help you do that are these two ideas that come up next. One is correct words. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily pronunciation in terms of your dialect. When I think correct words, I think use words that say what you really mean. And I'm sure you don't do this, but I know people who consistently use incorrect words. So, they've got it in their mind that a word means something. And so they just use it over and over and over again as though it is accurate, but it's not. So, I had a friend in high school named Will who was dating a girl named Ashley. And, Will was just very, very into her. And she happened to be the most controlling girlfriend that I ever encountered from any of my buddies or myself. Now, she would call Will every hour on the weekends to find out where he was if he wasn't with her. And Will put up with it because she was very attractive and that's what Will was looking for at the time. So, when she would call, he would say things like, "Oh, no, babe, we're over at Carl's house or we're at Matt's house or wherever we were. What are you doing?" "Well, we're watching this or playing that or, whatever it was." "Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure. I don't know, blah, 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 blah." Okay. Every time he would get off the phone to her, he would say, "Oh no, it's okay. I love you. Okay, I love you. Bye, bye." But to us, he would say as soon as he hung up, "God, she's so facetious." Facetious. Now, that means sarcastic, right? And so I remember the first maybe two times I heard him say this. "Man, she's just so facetious." I said, "No, man, I don't think she's facetious at all. I think she meant that. Like, she wants to know where you are. She's serious about this." And he was like, "Exactly. That's what I mean, man. She's just facetious and in all my business." Now, I don't know what word he was trying to use, but after a couple times, I'd quit correcting him and just let it go. Um, but you may know someone who does this. Some people will say, um, uh, irrespective or in those sorts of things. It's just seems sort of off. There's no need to throw in, oh, irregardless is the one that I was going for there. No, you can just say regardless. That's fine. Other folks want to sound extra proper, and so they'll use the word, and I've seen it a lot up here in terms of writing too. Amongst, amongst, just among is fine. Like you don't need to go and go crazy. I dreamt, you dreamed, right? These words, the example I gave with Will is just plain wrong, and it will be distracting to people. It's like Mike Tyson used to give interviews after all his fights, and he would just use the wrong words all the time. It was sheer pandalurious in here, and it's like, Mike, what? But he just got his face bashed in for a while. But saying amongst versus among or dreamt versus dreamed, not a huge deal. Both are technically grammatically correct, but I don't want you to get your audience sort of caught up on your pronunciation of a word or your use of a word and then lose their attention, right? So that's what we're trying to avoid here. This again applies for this informative style, but it's also the same for persuasive. If you lose them, they're not going to be persuadable because they're not paying attention. One other thing that can distract your audience is biased language. We've got a big list of exclusive language down below here. And let me say two things about it. First of all, this list is not exhaustive, there are more, but these are just some of the more popular ones that I hear. And the second thing is to say, personally, I try to avoid these words daily in, my normal life. However, you may not think it's that vital. And I want you to know that you may be right. The people that you talk to every day, it may not matter if you use these terms or don't use these terms. I mean, there's no slurs on this list for a reason, because those are so bad that we don't need to put them, I hope, on a list like this. The words on this list are those that we might use and not mean any offense to anyone. So our, sort of a pure motive of using it. But if you're talking to the right, or in this case, wrong person and use this kind of language, some people can become offended. And, for a public speaking setting, that's different than the people you talk to every day. This is, job interviews maybe where you don't know the person interviewing you very well, or giving a speech in front of a mixed audience like your group here, right? People have different feelings about different things in our class. So I just want you to be careful with these. Now, as I mentioned, there's no slurs on here. I will touch on one just because I hear it sometimes. It's one that folks most of the time don't even understand as a slur, but it's when you say, if someone cheated you and you say, I was gypped, that's actually a racial slur, right? So try to get that out of your vocabulary in general. It refers to gypsies, gypped, and that implies that all gypsies will steal from you. But wait for it. Gypsy is even a derogatory term for the Romani people, which is a whole cultural group of folks who are often nomadic, at least historically speaking. So they cheated me, right? Just go with the simplest version. Now, on this list, we can look through these. And again, some of them aren't a huge deal. Some of them may be, depends. But anything that ends in man, you see it there, policeman, fireman, chairman, salesman, weatherman, cameraman, that implies that only men can do these jobs or be these titles. And it used to be the case that this was true, which is where we get the title from. But as times have changed and, equality, ideas of equity have changed, the words have often remained the same. However, there are other alternatives. So you see those on the right side. Policeman versus police officer, fireman versus firefighter. My son is huge into fire trucks and firefighters right now. And it's one of those things that I didn't think about before parenthood too much, of how careful I have to be of saying firefighter, because he says fireman, oh, it's a fireman. And he's right, because the person he's talking about happens to be male. But my thought is, why have more cognitive loading? In other words, why do I need to say fireman and firewoman, policeman, policewoman, when I could just have one term instead of two that fits everybody? So police officer, firefighter, postal worker, chair, salesperson, you see them over on the right. Right? So keep that in mind as you prepare a speech, you're writing it out, or you're practicing it. And again, if you want to apply these to your everyday, by all means, feel free to do so. Maybe you already do this and this is a review for you, but take it for what it's worth. Now, the bottom of that first of sex terms there, you've got the words that end with ess, so stewardess, actress, hostess, that kind of thing. We've changed those over times too, because when it used to end with ess and it was sort of a role like one of these, it meant only women do these things. And we know that that's not true now. We know that men are flight attendants. Of course, men are actors. We used to use actor and actress. Now we just say, like if you're at the Oscars, leading female actor in a lead role or something. So just be careful with your use of some of these things. As far as gender is concerned, you've got pronouns, like at the speech lab, for example, in your session notes. We don't use pronouns except for they and them and theirs. It's the go-to. We want to make sure that we're not assuming too much. I use pronouns frequently, and it's one of those risks that you might take. But hey, is it a big deal? Not for everyone, but if you get it wrong just one time, trust me, it feels like a big deal. We actually switched to them, they, and theirs in the lab after a student came in who was transgender, presented, or they were a man, but they were a transgender man, and the name that was still in the Grand Valley system is typically a female name. So let's say it was Sarah. It wasn't, but so we're waiting. We've got a waiting room full of people, and we're like, okay, Sarah, you're next. Come on back. No one moved. Sarah, is Sarah with us? Nothing. Finally, the man came to the front and was like, yeah, that's me. Let's go, and then explained what had happened. So, again, if you're trying to make an impact on a group in a positive way, and then something like that happens, it can throw everything off. Other terms on there, homosexual, we really are more specific than that now. We call it, the LGBTQIA even community. So gay man, lesbian woman, transgender person, that kind of thing, right? Hermaphrodite or hermaphroditic, that used to be a medical term to someone who was born with both male and female genitalia. Now that's intersexed. Sex change is better to be called gender confirmation surgery or transitioning. Sex change means it feels more like, okay, you just changed your sex, but gender confirmation implies that you always identified as male, female, trans, whatever it might be, right? And now you just made your body match the way you feel. And then last one on there, girl, boy versus woman and man. And I've got age on there. So, the oldest boy and the oldest girl are 17, official, right? I asked this question in class, like, how old is the oldest girl? And I've heard everything from, 21 or 13 or whenever she becomes a woman, and it's like, no. It's legally, it's 17. When you turn 18, you're an adult and you're a woman and a man. But when you're below that, you're a boy and a girl. That's why in high school it's called boys basketball, girls basketball. And in college, it's men's basketball and women's basketball. Now, I bring this up because a lot of, especially older men, like to refer to all females as girls. And that's problematic. It's very problematic. So, you'll hear women say things like, we're going to have a girls' night out, that kind of thing. Great. That's one thing. And because they are in the in group there, they're women talking about other women and describing them as girls, it's not a huge deal. But, as men, we need to be careful of that. And then on the flip side, boys, whether the boys coming over, that kind of thing. Again, a lot of folks could care less. And if it's your friend group, they probably care less. But, if it's a group of men and you call them boys, that could be problematic, especially if race is involved. God help you. In the South, where I'm from, white people often called black men boy in order to show dominance over them. even way after slavery. I mean, still in some places. Matter of fact, my roommate in college, who happened to be a black guy, his dad was named Man. We called him Manny, but his name was just Man. And it seemed like that's a strange name. Well, it's because the grandfather grew up being called Boy, his whole life. Boy, 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 boy. And he said, they're not going to call my son that. That's why I'm going to name him Man. So now they can call him Man, or they can call him by his name, which is also Man. So this can get really deep into people's psyche. So the big takeaway here, think about, again, not you and your friends talking, but presenting to people that you're not sure about and what they prefer, what they are, sensitive to or offended by, and play it safe. That's the advice, especially in a speech setting. Now, the last one there is race. That one looks real easy. Usually, you just shouldn't describe it, but we're notorious as humans to describe the other, whoever that is, often by color. And so instead of just saying, there was a group of guys who did the thing, it'll often, if it's from a white person or someone who isn't, like, let's say, black, it'll be like, there's a group of black guys, that kind of thing. And it's not just like, white people are the only people that do this. In college, the majority of my friend group happened to be black, and that's just the way that was. But my best friend, who was also my roommate, I was talking about earlier, whenever we would go somewhere in college and it was mainly other black men, we would walk in and he would be like, "What's up, everybody? Like, this is white boy Carl. He's cool." Right? So that was sort of the introduction. And so even identifying me as white boy Carl sort of was a marker that I was the other in that situation, and that he's okay. That's how comfortable we are with each other, that he can just refer to me as that. And so, you know, again, sometimes it's good. I mean, to use this if there's an emergency and there's a room full of white people, but the black person is having the heart attack, then you don't want to be like, yeah, okay, they're sitting over there. What are they wearing? It's a red shirt. Oh, well, what do they look like? They're fairly tall. No, you might need to use this to identify someone quickly, and that's different than just or including color, race, that kind of thing, in a place where it doesn't have any impact to the story or the situation that's under discussion. So again, look through the list. If there, I'm sure there's again other terms that will go on here, could go on here, but be careful with this and play it safe, as I said. Now, when we think next about nonverbal delivery, I want you to kind of really, besides that chart, think that there was just this much text on verbal. Now we've got a whole host of items to discuss about nonverbal delivery, and we'll move through this fairly quickly. But I can't express how important this is. I can't do it enough, because, in my opinion, delivery of a message is at least half of everything, right? It's just as important as the actual message itself. And you don't have to look very far to see how this might work. Someone could give you a very heartfelt message, but if they seem to be bothered to have to do it and they're distracted, and, oh yeah, well, I've always kind of really liked you, and we'll probably end up together, I hope. But it's like they're playing a game while they try to talk to you. It doesn't feel the same. Think about the "I Have a Dream" speech. The best speech that we have a recording of. Now think about how it was delivered. Now imagine like an 8-year-old with a speech impediment delivering that speech. It wouldn't have hit the same, right? It just wouldn't have hit the same. And so the delivery matters. And here are some things that you should consider. First of all, eye contact. You need to make it. Why? Because in our culture, it communicates honesty, social attraction, and attention to the audience. Now, for us, I know it's a little strange because we're on camera, but make sure that you look at your camera for the majority of the speech. I mean, you can look down at your notes. You can take a moment and find your place if you need to. You can read statistics or quotes, that kind of stuff. But look up at the camera more than you're not. Okay. And a lot of folks want to do sort of and this is in the online speaking, they'll do the news interview approach. So it's almost like there's someone over there they're talking to, and they never come to look at the camera. Don't do that. Square up, look right into it. And that is the ideal way to do an online speech or, an in-person speech. If we were in rooms, it would be important to talk about looking around the room, but we're not really in any need for that here. Some people like to pretend there's an audience, and so they'll sort of talk over here and then they'll talk over there, but they always come back to the camera, and then they might go back over. That's fine if you want to do that, no problem. Do try not to read your attention getter. Now, that won't be an option at the next speech. You can't read your attention getter and be persuasive. It just won't happen. For this speech, though, try to really not use notes. You can if you have to, but try not to. It will make your speech so much better in terms of delivery, and it will make a difference for the audience. So, again, do use your notes as you need to, but try to look at the camera, quote, eye contact as much as possible. I understand that it's one of the things that creates anxiety, because looking at the camera feels strange sometimes, just like looking at people in their eyes can. So if we were in a room, I would give you other options to deal with that. You see them there, but we don't have that real issue here. The key thing, though, to take away from all this with eye contact is don't read the speech. Really. So I've not seen you give a speech yet, so I'm not saying this about any one of you in particular, but I've seen it in the past. And I'll tell you, this isn't a reading class, right? It's a speaking class. So if you read your speech, you will not pass that speech. It won't happen. Let me say it again. If you read your speech, you will not pass that speech. Now, again, you can read parts, you can use notes, you can reference that kind of thing, but as well as I do, some folks just bury their head, start reading, flip, read, or on their screen, and they never look up. So make sure you're not doing that. That will help you have a smoother delivery overall, because you're practicing more for understanding what you're saying and memorizing it, though I don't expect you to memorize your speech, but it will happen as you practice more and more, and it will just make everything flow and look better. So don't read the speech. Be ready not to use those notes for everything, just to keep yourself on track. Now, the next one here is about movement. And again, this is weird for us because, you don't have a big range of movement available because of the camera. I mean, unless you're using like a selfie stick or something in a phone and like it moves with you, most of us aren't going to do that. So for us, you will want to have some movement, but it will be in the box. And so again, if you're standing, you can sort of turn your body here or there. You might go to this side of the box and talk for a minute, and then when you go to a different point, you may come over here, and then you go back to the middle. That's sort of a small box version of the speaker's triangle. But do remember that the further away you are from the camera, the more room you have to move. So don't just sit, right up on it. Now, again, that's information taken from the chapter on effective online communication. Go back and review that. We won't go through the rest of these except to say control your movement. So uncontrolled movement comes out in a lot of different ways, but we want to avoid sort of the swaying and the jiggling and, playing with hair. We'll get to that in just a minute, but be in control. All right, next up, gestures. We need those. Now, seems weird. We start talking about it and everybody pays attention to hands all of a sudden. You don't need to, direct traffic. And okay, so as you can see, my first point will move, and then we're taking it here. Then we're going to spin that over and really push it forward. You don't need to do all that. But you do need some gestures. Again, they naturally happen. Now, with me, the way I'm sitting, you can see my hands popping in here. And that's problematic because you can't see my gestures. Now, because I'm sitting, if I were sitting like this and gesturing, it would probably look weird because it's hiding my face. That's another reason for you to stand if physically possible. so that we can see you and your gestures at the same time. Gestures to an audience communicate, again, attention, that you're paying attention to them, that you're confident, that's important, and it helps them understand things. Because if you say, we're going to go from here to there, and it's just that easy, boy, you're so much better off than just saying we went from here to there. From where to where? From here to there. Here to there. Give it a chance. This is a very small issue. This is a big deal. First we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do that. Sure, go down the hall and take a left, then go around the corner and be on your right. We do it all the time. So make sure that you don't lose that here. Do plan your gestures and be in control of those as well. So say avoid the Ricky Bobby. If you've seen the movie, his hands just float up. I don't know what to do with my hands. But, you'll want to, again, stay in control of that and then be purposeful. And that's what we were saying earlier with showing small, large movement, that kind of thing. There are a few moves to avoid. Okay, so one of them is the parade rest. And parade rest is when you put your hands behind your back, right? And you don't move. Another one is putting your hands in your pockets. And, well, you know what? Hang on just one second. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint here that will demonstrate these moves. I'm going to have to cut the video right there. Actually, let's just we'll just go and look at these online. So let's do parade rest. Let me zip back over here. Parade rest speech. Yep. So putting your hands behind you. That's what you want to avoid. It does look very nice in terms of military personnel or other people, standing at an attention, but it takes away from your audience's ability to trust you because we can't see your hands. And when you can't see someone's hands, you don't trust them. So that's good for this situation like we see on the screen, but not for speaking. The next one is putting your hands in your pockets. That's pretty obvious. Don't do that. Again, it's hiding your hands. We can't see them. We don't know what's going on. You could probably get by with one hand in your pocket, but only if it's for an effect. So I used to call it the attorney walk, where you're walking and using one hand just all the time while the other one's in the pocket to show that you're both in control here, and then pocket in the hand in the pocket is and also relaxed. Let's avoid pockets for us. Next, you've got the fig leaf. Let's see, fig leaf stance. That's the one. Avoid this. Avoid these things. It draws attention to your junk. I mean, basically, you don't want to do it. And this is where it comes from. When you think about like an Adam and Eve story, and they always are depicted with fig leaves over their persons there. We don't want that for a speech. There's another one. I think the next one is the chicken wing speech stance. There's a speech about chicken wings. That is not what we're going for. Let's see. I'll tell you what it is. We'll find it this way. Hand on hip while speaking. Whoops, it's spelled right. That would be a version. This is the double chicken wing here. That would be a chicken wing. What it really does as a speaker is that it makes you look sort of standoffish. You're just sort of, let me tell you a thing. And if you really get into it, it starts to flap, and that's why it's called the chicken wing. What is next? Flesh wound. Okay. Flesh wound. Flesh wound stance speaking. Let's see if anything comes up. None of these are jumping out. So let's come back here for a second. So when you think of the flesh wound, it's when someone stands like this. Okay, well, the thing is, I really blah blah blah. They don't realize they're doing it usually. But they hold on to themselves somewhere. I mean, they're just freaking out. It's like they've been cut and they're holding the wound, right? That's why it's called the flesh wound. So avoid that. The next one here is the wall off. That's pretty clear. Don't give your speech with this. You create a wall between you and the audience. And then the note statue is next. So the note statue is when people will hold their notes here. You can see me. And they never move that. It's just where their notes are. They'll look at it and they'll look back at you and they'll look at it and they'll look at the camera. But it's like it's a stand that just, it's not part of their body anymore. It's just like an attachment. And you don't want that. You want to move with your notes. You can have them in one hand. As a matter of fact, while we're on this is a good moment for this. So for your notes during a speech, you can have whatever you want with you except note cards. God, don't use note cards. If you drop them, it's not good. Many people would be thinking that the way to do this is to just start up here, right? And so here's the title, and you sort of gotta use a Sharpie so you can see it. And you just go in traditional order, 1, 2, and 3. Don't do it like this. Instead, turn your paper landscape when you go to create it in like Word, and then put a column in there. So now you've got 2 pages with 2 columns on each page. Okay, there they are. On the front, you might do intro, main point 1, actually, main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, and conclusion. So now it might look like this. I'm going to start, I know it's backwards in the camera, but intro, then main point 1, flip it over, main point 2, and then main point 3 with the conclusion. Now, to make this even better, here's what I recommend that you do. Take this and fold it so that the intro is on one side, and put it right down the middle there, which I'm having trouble doing because this isn't exactly drawn in the right spot. Okay, now you've got a piece of paper this size. Think about it. This size, you can hear that. This size, much less. Okay, so that's going to help you in a couple ways. Plus, look, now I can gesture with these notes in my hand. There's even like a way to hold these if you wanted to, sort of like this, or you can lace your fingers through it and get a little creative. That way it's a firm grip and you're still moving around. Nothing wrong with holding it the old-fashioned way, though. But what this allows you to do is to start with the intro, and then instead of flipping over a page, all you need to do is turn it. Now I've got main point 1 right here in front of me. When I'm ready to move past that, I can just open it, fold it over, and close it. Now I've got main point 2 here, and then main point 3 in the conclusion back there. And so that's what I recommend. That gets all your notes down to one sheet of paper. They're on separate sort of 4 pages, if you will, so you can keep everything nice and straight, and it's a clean look. It's so much better than note cards or a bunch of paper stapled together, and that's really what I recommend you use. Okay, that'll help you with those gestures. All right, let's go. Let me shrink myself. Go to voice here, nonverbal elements. So when you think of voice, you may think, boy, isn't that verbal? We've already talked about that. The words that your voice creates are verbal, but the way that you say them, that's considered nonverbal. So volume. Can we hear you? I mean, this is weird because, again, we're using technology, but can your microphone pick you up? Is there background noise? Again, if I can hear you, I can grade you, but if I can't hear you deliver some element, I can't give you credit for it. I don't know if it was there. So find a happy medium in your volume. And the big thing is don't drop volume at the end of speeches, right? It just sort of falls off at the end of speeches. What was that? To make sure that you're talking to us in a clear way that we can understand. Now, rate is another element. The basic here is don't speed through this, but don't crawl through this. I've only, in all these years of, gosh, teaching since 2005, um, 15 years now, I've only had one speech that I remember that was too slow. And the guy was high AF when he gave his speech. And he told me that afterwards. Strange. He said he got nervous, so I decided to get high. And apparently, he overdid it a little bit, Chief. But, find that happy medium again. Just think about conversational style with all these things. You wouldn't scream at the person that you thought of earlier, but you wouldn't whisper to them either. You wouldn't speed through, but you wouldn't crawl through. So think about how you would do this. Same thing with your pitch and inflection. That changes. It goes up and down with positive. I'm sorry, up with positive, down with negative. Um, the idea there of the news reporter method of wrapping up segments, that's an option, of course. But if you've ever watched local news, especially, they do this thing with their voice when they're finished with a segment or report. Instead of saying, like, reporting live from Allendale, I'm Carl Brown, they'll say, reporting live from Allendale, I'm Carl Brown. And it sounds weird, but boy, they're finished when they do that. There's no, false applauses happening if a speech ends that way. So you could use that if you want, but just be natural. Vocal fillers and vocalized pauses, those are the ums, uhs, likes, and you knows. First things first. It doesn't matter if you have some of those. They're normal. It's completely normal to say like, that or others, whatever yours happen to be. The problem is when they are so frequent that it distracts from the message of the speech and the other elements of delivery of that speech. So what happens there is our brain just wants to be quiet and think. It needs to process something. So in response, our body, with a little nervous energy going, fills the silence with those sorts of things. Again, if this is minor, then don't even worry about it. Record yourself though, because most of the people who do this don't even know that they do it until it's pointed out to them. So check your performance, check yourself on this. One of the probably most problematic versions of this are when people begin every sentence with and right? So it would be something like, I'm in my office today and I'm recording this lecture so that you can learn more about public speaking. And I want to make clear that it's that, right? Try to avoid that if that's at all possible. And silent pauses are better than vocalized pauses, but again, it's going to happen. Okay, so that takes us through the chapter on informative speaking. The key takeaways verbally. Well, let's start before that. Be objective and conversational. Don't take a side. Stay down the middle, sort of just the facts. Then verbally, be clear and use correct words that aren't going to distract or offend people within reason. I mean, if you want to offend to make a point, that's one thing, but you know what I mean. Non-verbally, make eye contact. For us, that's with the camera. Have some movement, though you're limited. This won't be a huge issue for you. Make sure your voice is working for you, not against you. So it's loud enough to hear. It's at a pace that we can understand and follow. It shifts with emotional change or topic change, and it has a lack of or a very small amount of vocalized pauses. The ums, uhs, likes, and you knows. Great. So if you're watching this video but you haven't watched the other one with the demo on the outline, watch that first. Remember, here's the deal. This week on the 2nd, October 2nd, yes, your outline is due. Then next week, after that, your actual recorded speech is due. Okay? Go back, watch the videos, see if you have questions, and let me know if you do. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Have a great week.